Ram Racing Mercedes certainly is going to be a factor in a race that will have Phil Keane on pole position and Callum McLeod alongside him. So the opening laps are going to be very interesting indeed. Now, Ian Logie was a very frustrated driver, understandably, at the end of race 1. Let's see what his mood is like going into race 2. He's on the grid, and so too is Andy J.
Yes, it's as ever exciting to be on the grid before the race starts, but I'm here with ice cool Ian Logie. Ian, you were the story pretty much of the first race because of what happened to you. Tell us how you feel about the whole situation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it? We've been fast all weekend, qualified pole, and then the key thing for me was to get away decently through the first 2 corners and around Oulton Park. If you do that and don't make any mistakes, then you should go on and win the race, and that's how it felt for the first lap and a half. And then unfortunately the Bentley of Ryan,
He needs to open his door, get a bit of air.
Sorry, the Bentley of Ryan, he's just made a silly mistake and piled into the back of me, which ended the race. But there you go, we all make mistakes, so we live to fight another day. We're sitting second here at the moment in the grid front row. I'm sure Callum and Phil Keane have had a little tussle, but we're hopeful we can do it in this race. So,
I mean, it's an opportunity, isn't it, straight away to put it right, which is the great thing about having these back-to-back races.
100%. And round here as well, I love this track. It really is an amazing track. We've got the chance to put it right, so we'll see what happens in the next hour.
Great stuff. Well, we wish you the very best, and most important, an incident-free race this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would take that all day long.
Good on you. Car looks amazing, by the way. Thank you. Right, let's have a quick word to Adam. I think there he is. He's posing with his grid position lady at the moment. However, let's interrupt him anyway. Adam, we thought we'd just catch you there whilst you were posing. Do you want to swap places for the interview as well?
No,
Could be a bit. Go on, you can ask me something. So look, first and foremost, welcome back to British GT. You've been missed.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be back and stepped up to GT3 and decent start.
It's a terrific start, getting P2 in the first race, and now you start on pole. I'm going to say to you, of course, you got Phil Keane in there, so not so much pressure for the first 20+ minutes, but then the heat is on, right?
There's quite a lot of pressure for the last half hour, definitely. I've just got to do what I learned, hit my marks and try and drive it well, and we'll see what happens, but fingers crossed.
You've been doing this a fair while now, not specifically British GT, but racing in general. Do you still get the old squeaky bum feeling?
Oh God, all the time, especially one of these. These are fast. These GT3s are really fast, so I'm still getting used to them. And of course, if you're not slightly scared, you're not going fast enough.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being terrified, where are you at right now?
I'm 7 and building.
7 and building. Remind me to talk to you later, but not when you're about a 9. No, exactly, that could get flagrant. Exactly. Thanks so much. Enjoy the race. Have fun. Guys, I'm going to charge down to GT4, so if you wouldn't mind just talking us through the grid a bit while I get myself down there, because there's a bit of a hike.
There's plenty of GT4 to get to. There's a lot of GT3 to walk past, first of all. And Andy, we had some excellent GT4 racing earlier on. Seb Priaulx is the man that starts on pole position, but he blotted his copybook a bit, didn't he, by ending up in the tyres?
Yeah, down at Cascades, just a bit of contact, trying to fight his way back into a top 4 position, and there was a bit of a sense of frustration, I think, from Multimatic, because they locked out the front row, didn't they, for GT4 in race 1, and ended up with neither car on the podium. They lost a bit of time in the pit stops, and they were never really able to get themselves fully back onto terms with the McLaren group, and the one shot that Seb had to get back past one of them, it all ended in tears, unfortunately, but it's Seb's turn this time. He'll be on the front row. The sister car will be starting a little bit further back, unfortunately, back on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th row of the grid with Chad McCumbee at the wheel.
We were discussing in the first race the move that didn't work for Seb Priaulx, and he ended up in the tyres. David Pittard suggested it was a move his dad might have pulled, and we said, well, yeah, but he'd have made it work. Andy has contradicted all of us by saying if I'd have pulled it, the other car would have been in the tyre wall. So now we know the way the thought process works. David, we had some excellent racing up and down the field, didn't we, in that first race today?
Yeah, seriously close stuff. So, yeah, like I say, I really hope that sets the tone for the rest of the year and the second race as well. A couple of little silly mistakes there. First race of the season, you can expect that a little bit. So hopefully they've got that all out of their system now and have a little bit cleaner race. We had a McLaren going up in flames towards the end, didn't we? The GT4 competition was so hot, we lost right at the very end one of the 2 Tollman cars, which was the Jordan Collard Lewis Proctor
number 5 car with flames that they were saying came about from damage hit from behind by one of the HHC cars.
Yeah, there was a contact going to the final corner by the sounds of things, which pushed the exhaust where it shouldn't have done, which set on fire something it shouldn't have done, and the team were good enough to spot, quick enough to spot the flames, radioed the driver, and yeah, he was good enough to unfortunately give up his podium position, but for the good of the car, and therefore they're back out for this second race.
And it's going to be worth watching that GT4 fight once again, because we've had some excellent racing in there. We talked about in the context of the earlier race, Jordan Collard, one of the 2 drivers, being Rob Collard's younger son. I was a day out because Rob had another one yesterday, so the Collard dynasty is increasing, so he is now Rob's middle son, not the younger of the 2. There's now a 3rd one, but that's breaking news. Now, looking down onto the grid, you can see at the very back the Sean Cooper KTM. That was a car that was in problems in the earlier race. There should be others behind him as well. There should be Aaron Taylor-Smith's Ford Mustang, and the grid might need a little shuffling, but we'll get things underway in a moment. Right, let's go back to the grid, see who Andy has found yet next.
Well, I'd love to say that I've got someone for you, David, but unfortunately all the drivers that aren't starting in the cars are making their way back with the teams into the pits. So we are here at the front of GT4, however, and I just want to show you some of the fabulous display of GT4 cars that are available. In pole, of course, it's the Mustang. Now, it'll be fascinating to see how they fare in this round, because in the first race they didn't quite deliver. Remember, it was a 1-2 lockdown for the first round, and well, they didn't bring it home as planned. Seb Priaulx, however, is starting on pole, so it'd be great to watch him. He's really growing into this championship, so it'd be lovely to see how he does, because it's a loud and fast and glorious car. Then, of course, just looking amongst us, so many cool machines on display. We've got the Mercedes-AMG GT4, obviously the new Aston. You can see there's a couple there, and the F-Type Jag GT4 as well. Fabulous machinery. And then a little further back, as we know how good they are around here, there's a whole bevy of McLarens. I don't know if that's a technical term for a collection of McLarens, but we're going with it nonetheless. I'm sorry there's no one else to talk about here. However, there are glorious, glorious cars, and we know this is going to be a terrific race.
Can't argue with that. That Ford Mustang is pretty special, and it's great that we've got 3 of them on the grid this year. You've got the 2 Multimatic cars. There's also the race performance car that's going to be started by former British Touring Car Championship race winner Aaron Taylor-Smith. The KTM at the back, add to the mix BMW and Jaguar. The list of brands represented goes on and on and on. It's a huge crowd at Oulton Park this Easter Monday as well, and they are going to be treated to a great hour of racing, I'm sure of that. So 60 minutes the race will be, mandatory pit stops and 2 windows effectively, Andy, the way this works, because the pit lane could get so congested. They want to have 1 window for the GT3, 1 for the GT4 cars.
Yeah, the GT3 window opens fractionally earlier at 22 minutes into the race. The GT3 cars will be allowed to pit, and they have a 10-minute window in which to pit from 22 to 32 minutes. The GT4s, they can come in from 28 minutes to 38 minutes. There's a small overlap, but because of the way that, particularly in the first race, we saw most of the AM drivers in GT3 coming in early, tends to free up the pit lane a little bit. A sensible call. I think we've seen congestion in the past, particularly if a safety car comes out at an inopportune moment, and we certainly didn't seem to have too much congestion until Nicky Team stalled in the middle of the pit lane after serving a stop-go penalty. Apart from that, everyone seemed to be able to stay out of each other's way.
Yeah, it's only the European GT4 series had at Brands Hatch last year, for example, that staggered pit window, and on safety grounds, because the pit lane, not only is it a short one, it's a pretty narrow one anyway. It's a very good idea. So we're almost good to go racing. Let's put David on the spot here. He's probably going to say BMW because he races these with great success on the continent, but after what we saw in race 1, can you pick a winner?
It's going to be close between the front row, I think. Phil has shown he's got mega pace. Callum has shown he's got massive mega pace over the weekend. Both their co-drivers have as well. I'd say when you look at probably the 2 driver pairings, you'd probably say maybe Callum and Ian are going to be the most consistent from the front 2. But the Parfit BMW is not far behind. Parfit Bentley is not far behind either. So I think it's going to come from one of the first 2. If I'm going to stick my neck on the line, I'm going to go the Ram Racing Merc.
Okay, well that would be a fine turnaround of fortune given what the squad went through earlier on in the day. There's the back of the GT4 grid being released, including the KTM, which didn't get terribly far in the first race, didn't get to the end. Everybody else has now been released. As I say, I think everybody is there. The only question mark was over Jack Bluetown number 35, but no, I think that car is on the grid as well, and 23 Aaron Taylor-Smith is starting at the back. So the grid complete, and this is how it will look, with Phil Keane starting on pole position and Callum McLeod, former Formula Ford champion, lining up alongside him. On the second row of the grid, it's Adam Christodoulou and then Seb Morris. Mercedes lining up alongside Bentley. The third row, there's Johnny Cocker in the first of the two second Barwell Lamborghini. Nicky Thiem alongside him, Tom Ferrier's Aston Martin, and then you've got Marco Sorensen for Beechdene and Jack Mitchell in the Century BMW 4 Company. He will go from 8th on the grid. 9th is Ben Green's BMW. Johnny Adam, only 10th, but he could be one to watch in the first few corners. The multiple champion, to see what progress can be made. Next on the grid is Bradley Ellis, who drove a wide car in the first race. Glyn Geddy will go from 12th plus 15 seconds in the pits because of the Ryan Ratcliffe penalty. Adam Wilcox rounds out the GT3 grid, and then it's Seb Prio and Scott Malvern on the front row of GT4. Behind them is Michael Broadhurst lining up in his Mercedes alongside Martin Plowman with the Beechdene AMR entry. Next row of the grid, Tom Canning for TF Sport and Matt George in the Invictus Games Racing Jaguar. On the next row of the grid, Luke Williams. Now he gets success time in the pits. I'll go through this in a moment, but for being third, he carries extra time in the GT4 stops. Alongside him, there will be Lewis Proctor. Then you've got Angus Fender and Josh Smith next up, with the Josh Smith-Tolman McLaren car to watch. Then the Chad McCumbee started Ford Mustang, and alongside him is former touring car racer Josh Price. Next up, Michael O'Brien and Jakob Mathieson. Mathieson driving the Century Motorsport BMW as the cars now file their way through Druids. Will Moore and MICAH Stanley for Academy Motorsport are on the 16th row. The 17th row, there's Callum Poynton, GT4 winner earlier on in the day, and Mike Robinson alongside him. Sean Cooper comes next in the KTM alongside Jack Butel, Aaron Taylor-Smith's Mustang at the back of the grid. If you're in the top 3, you carry success time in the pit. So 70 seconds for a GT3 car plus 10 seconds for Seb Morris and Rick Parfitt, 7 for Phil Keane and 5 for Bradley Ellis's cars when they get to the pit stops. And it's 105 seconds for a GT4 stop, and again you get the 10, 7 and 5 accordingly. So round 2 of the British GT Championship about to get underway here at Oulton Park. Phil Keane in the green and black Lamborghini on pole position. It's Callum McLeod alongside him, who is going to have the bigger whatnots to break latest going into Old Hall Corner. We are about to find out then as round 2 of the championship gets underway. Now the lights go out. A good start is made by Callum McLeod, but it's not good enough. It goes up on the inside line, goes Adam Christodoulou in the Mercedes to go second. Callum McLeod gets forced out wide over the curb then, and it is going to be Phil Keane who leads down towards Cascades for the first time. This is the onboard view as they plunge through Denton's. Turn left, up into second is Christodoulou. Third now, it is Seb Morris, and so Callum McLeod is 4th at best as they go along Lakeside Straight, but a perfect getaway by Phil Keane.
Yeah, a bit of contact there, I think, wasn't there, between the team ABBA Racing Mercedes of Christodoulou and the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini of Keane, but Keane was determined not to overshoot Old Hall Corner, sort of stopped the car in the middle of the turn and got head-butted by the Mercedes. No serious damage appears to have been done. They're all safely up to this top part of the circuit. The GT4 battle's taking a little longer maybe to sort themselves out. It was very congested, wasn't it, on the run down the hill in the early going for GT4. And another good start for the JRM Racing Bentley. Again, a position gain there off the start for Seb Morris this time around. But Rick Parfitt was on his toes at the first start, wasn't he?
Indeed so. Now, don't forget, Phil Keane will have to serve an extra 7 seconds in the pits by being second in race 1. It's an extra 10 for the 31 Bentley. So places gained here will be negated in the pit stops as the cars wriggle their way for the first time through Knickerbrook. Then now the run uphill. Glorious noise these cars make as you ride now on board underneath the footbridge heading towards Druids. But up front it's Phil Keane who leads the way. Now there, number 2 Aston Martin, that's Nicky Thiem with work to do. But at the end of the opening lap, Phil Keane it is, and it looks, David, as though he's been able to build a bit of a cushion on this first lap.
Yeah, this is what we saw in qualifying, and it's what we saw in race 1. Keane just putting down the pace straight away. Purple sector 2, purple sector 3, and yeah, he's built 1.4 advantage already. So yeah, he knows he's got a deficit to overcome. If he knows he's got the pace to probably build up 7 seconds in his first half of the stint, which means Adam should come out in the lead again.
Now, the Mike McCollum Sean Cooper KTM has been given a 10-second stop-go penalty for a start procedure infringement. So, we said in race 1 they never had much luck at Oulton Park. The KTM, I'm afraid, is going to be given a stop-go penalty for whether it was overtaking before the start of the race or for being out of position. We will await news, but either way the car's being given a penalty. And now look at this battle back for 2nd and 3rd and 4th, all of which plays right into the hands of Phil Keane, who is away and gone. Now Adam Christodoulou in 2nd place is the cork in the bottle. He's got Seb Morris behind him. 4th is McLeod, 5th is Thiem, 6th is Cocker, in 7th place it is Jack Mitchell, 8th is Bradley Ellis, 9th is Johnny Adam. The KTM has served its stop and go, and there was more stopping than going in that because the car stalled. But anyway, it's back in the race as you ride on board now with Johnny Adam going down towards his locks, up the curb, back on the power, through Knickerbrook. But Johnny Adam stuck in the traffic here, David. He's not finding it easy to get through, is he?
Yeah, I was talking to his teammate Graham Davidson between the races, and they were just saying that the Astons, they feel are very down on straight line speed at the moment. So their game plan, talking from the most successful man in British GT, is just to score points. Safety car is deployed. Safety car on track. Not seen anything. Oh, there's the answer. 77 is in the gravel. That's the Michael Broadhurst started Mercedes that he shares with Mark Murphy. That is at Cascades, and he's facing the wrong way. And there is no option, Andy, is there, when you've got a big heavy GT car up to its axles? Safety car.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even that far off the circuit. And of course, if one car can go off there, so can another. So it gives us a chance to catch our breath, though, doesn't it? That was a particularly breathless start to the race, that. But Phil Keane will be disappointed. This is the last thing that he needed, because he was building up that margin nicely. A 7-second cushion was looking doable.
Yeah.
And now, of course, he loses potentially 3 or 4 laps of his drive time in which to continue building that margin.
So the gaps will come down accordingly as everybody now files up behind the safety car. And let's have a quick look, if we can, at exactly how Phil Keane got that start, because you could see the intent, couldn't you, here on the run down towards Old Hall from Callum McLeod. But David, that Lamborghini was always going to be in the box seat because it had the inside line.
Yeah, you want to try and ride the brake and get the launch on the car ahead, but Callum just got jumped here, I think. Adam Christodoulou was super keen on getting into that Mercedes-sized gap into turn 1 there. He kind of made a Mercedes-sized gap there by headbutting the pole sitter. Luckily, both skilled drivers managed to hold on to it, and Adam was up in position there.
And it was relatively calm getting through Old Hall. Bit of dust in the air, but most have survived. And then the run down towards Cascades. So despite Oulton not being the widest of circuits, the drivers largely behaving themselves pretty well, having been read the riot at by Peter Daly, the race director. This is how Phil Keane saw the start, storming up towards the line, accelerates away down towards Old Hall. And of course, Phil, factory Lamborghini driver, knows this car inside out, Andy, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, and he's rather rapid in them, isn't he? And this new generation Lamborghini Huracan Evo for this season is going pretty well already, isn't it? Interestingly, I noticed from that onboard there with the GT4 cars, Scott Malvern briefly held the lead through Old Hall Corner, went round the outside of Seb Priaulx, carried more momentum off the corner, and I think got balked slightly by the GTC Porsche of Adam Wilcox, had to back off, and so back through went Priaulx. But the Mercedes was ahead briefly, as you can see there. The red and black Mercedes is now down into second place, and good to see the Jag doing well, isn't it? Third place at the moment for the Invictus Games car. They've had some rotten luck over the last 12 months or so, so fingers crossed for them. They can keep it out of trouble and maybe come home with a podium or a top 5.
Indeed so. Safety car brings them down towards Lodge Corner. Right, David, put your crash helmet on, as it were, for a moment. What does a driver have to do during a phase like this? It's not just a case of sit there and travel around, is it?
No. Some of these cars, like the BM, have got tyre pressure monitoring systems on them, so the drivers themselves can see when the tyre pressures are dropping due to the temperature dropping in the tyres, because they're not driving as fast. So, yeah, they're going to be working hard to bring them up to operating temperature. I think they had maybe a lap and a half, 2 laps. So they're probably just about in the window. And now they've had to slow back down again. So they're going to really have to be working those. Same with the brakes as well. They can ride the brakes, left foot braking, which will radiate heat into the tyre as well as weaving to heat up the surface of the tyre as well. They'll be also keeping an eye on this situation that's on track at the moment, so they can work out how quickly the safety car is going to be in, and then how intently they need to make sure their pressures are up, their temperatures are up, so they can hit the ground running. Hopefully it shouldn't be too long.
Well, one driver who sadly ain't doing much running anymore, Mark Murphy, who would have been in 77 in the second stint. He's with Andy J.
Well, yes, we are obviously watching the car being taken away now. And Mark, obviously, you told me you're not going to cry, but you're not thrilled, are you?
No, obviously you're not happy. From what I heard on the radio, MICAH got pushed off into the gravel, so that's kind of it, race over.
Well, I mean, what does that make you feel? Obviously, you were pepped up, you were ready to go, you were prepared to kind of let him do his thing and then have a barnstorming second half of the race.
I mean, we had a decent first race and we were feeling confident. So yeah, it's obviously a huge disappointment. We come here to race. And clearly you want to finish the races, so yeah, it's really disappointing.
I guess the only saving grace is that you've got one eye on the Easter eggs now and you can get into them early.
Do you reckon? Yeah, okay. Yeah, not about the suit next time round, though.
No, it's horrible to see a race ended, but at least no one's been hurt.
No, exactly. That's always the main thing. You know, you get out and you're ready for the next race. So, yeah, it's okay. You know,
we'll be there next round. Yeah, happy days. All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
See you later.
Thank you.
So Michael Broadhurst for Fox Motorsport walks away, and the car is there out of the gravel. It's on the Foster circuit, so it can now be lifted onto the flatbed, and that in turn can hopefully Scarper, but we're going to be another couple of laps, I would have thought, behind the safety car as they come then now down towards Lodge Corner. So Phil Keane is the race leader. Just to recap, now we can catch our breath. From Adam Christodoulou in second place is Lamborghini from Mercedes, from Bentley third of Seb Morris, and you were riding there with him. In fourth place, Callum McLeod. Fifth, Mickey Team there in the blue Aston Martin, ahead of Johnny Cocker in sixth place. Seventh, it is now Jack Mitchell. Eighth, Bradley Ellis. Ninth, Johnny Adam. And in 10th place, Ben Green in the second of the century BMWs. Marco Sorensen is 11th. Glyn Geddy is 12th, and that car doesn't have success time to add on in the pit stop. It's got a proper penalty of 15 seconds. There it is, number 7 Bentley, after the contact that Ryan Ratcliffe was involved in the first race. Now, what about GT4? It is Seb Prio from Scott Malvern, and then Matt George in the order as they turn their way through the corner at the moment. There's the Mercedes being lifted out of the way, and the field pouring its way through Old Hall. The KTM has also been allowed to catch back up again with this safety car, having served its stop go, Andy. It's now back on the train of cars.
Yeah, I was about to say that, actually. They've been sort of rapidly closing in on the back of the queue, and we'll see what sort of pace they've got. It's got good potential, that car. KTM in the past have had good success in the GT4 category of the English GT Championship, but a troubled start to the season for the local team, Track Focused, and they are, I believe, still on the lead lap as well, so they should hopefully be able to pick some more places off. A real shame for Fox Motorsport as well, isn't it? They were 10th in race 1 in GT4, but they started 3rd on the grid for this one, and unfortunately Michael Broadhurst, who had admittedly lost a few spots off the start in the gravel down at Cascades, on what could have been a chance for them to regain some much needed points. It's an interesting calendar we've got this year, isn't it? In that the 2 double headers are early in the season, so lost points now. You know, by the time we've got Oulton and Stetson out of the way, you're nearly halfway through the season, so if you're going to have bad races, the way you want to get them out of the way early, but you know, before you know it, you're halfway through the year.
And also the incident between Broadhurst and Ash Hand is being investigated, so that would suggest we now know which the other car was that got involved. 97, the TF Sport GT4 Aston Martin involved in that. They have that'll be looked at during the course of the race as well. So cars coming out of MICAH Brook, tyre pressures being maintained, tyre temperatures trying to be kept up, ready for the restart, but all of this eating into the stint for the pro drivers. And there is 77 Mercedes out of harm's way. Shouldn't be long to get that off the circuit now, but I would have thought another lap as the cars are heading now up through Druids. Another car that went well, David, in the earlier race out of GT4 was Balf Motorsports McLaren. It got something like 15 places in the end, didn't it, to get 3rd in the Pro-Am competition. The car of Graham Johnson and Michael O'Brien, and rather unnoticed, stealth-like, it just kept picking off places.
Yeah, I think it took a knock at the very beginning of the start as well. I think we saw in the highlights, but we didn't see at the time. So yeah, even with a little bit of sustained damage, it's good to see the Balf Motorsport crew have managed to gain as many positions as that. I mean, round Oulton Park is difficult enough to pass, so this shows both driver and team, I'm sure, combined have played a good strategy, and the drivers have done a good job to get them up the field. So yeah, great start to the year for those guys. And
we're going to go back racing this time because the safety car is due in, we are told. So the resumption of the race, as you see the cars pouring down through Cascades. GT cars around Oulton Park just look fantastic, and on a day like this, not only does the circuit look great, but GT cars just the perfect addition to Oulton Park.
Couldn't agree more, and the sights and sounds of a GT3 and GT4 grid really do delight, don't they? What I love about GT racing is that you can stand trackside, close your eyes, and you know which cars can be past you. They all have a distinct sound, distinct look, of course, as well, when you do open your eyes, which I'm sure you'll want to. It's nice to have that sort of variety. There's a lot to be said for one-make racing, but this, you know, multi-mark, multi-class sort of racing does provide great excitement, doesn't it? You were mentioning places gained in GT4 just then as well. Well, the second place Tottenham Motorsport car in race 1, they gained 8 places too. So the car being shared by Josh Smith and runner-up in the Renault Clio Championship last year, James Dorlin, who is always at pains to remind you that he did win more races than anybody else last year in Clios, even if he didn't quite wrap the title, but they gained 8 spots. So you can overtake it. You've got an hour to do it. You've got the traffic as well, and of course pit strategy too. So I know drivers like to complain that you can't really overtake around here, but there are lots of ways in which you can gain ground in this sort of race format.
Absolutely right. And of course, with everyone bunched up on the safety car like this, if you get a good restart, there's the chance of gaining a few more places. Trouble is, though, safety cars can breed safety cars, so let's hope they all get through Oulton safely. There's the GT4 leading car, Seb Prio, switching from single-seaters to GT cars. That Mustang, great-looking car. And the Grunt & Go Mustang then leads GT4 at the moment from Scott Malvern, former Formula Ford champion, in second place in the Mercedes, and then third in the Jaguar is Matt George. So Ford, Mercedes, Jaguar at the top three. Fourth Aston Martin is Martin Plowman, and the cars then now are about to go racing once more. Lights are out atop the safety car. They'll come down towards Lodge Corner, and Phil Keane versus Adam Christodoulou versus Seb Morris versus Callum McLeod. The list goes on the restart, but Phil Keane needs to time this to perfection. Adam Christodoulou, who is certainly no dummy in a GT car, will want to go with him, but the gap widens now slightly as they come out of Deardeep. You're on board with Seb Morris, who is third, and the green flag is waved. We go racing once more then with 46 minutes and change on the clock, down towards Old Hall Corner, and the leading quartet remains the same. Keane, Christodoulou, Morris, McLeod as they drop downhill. You see the way the GT3 cars have already pulled clear of the GT4 fight, and there Phil Keane a bit twitchy going into Cascades, and Adam Christodoulou runs a little bit wide, misses the clipping point, and that means that Seb Morris now is much closer. David, is he going to be able to have a go on the run towards Island Bend, or has he lost ground again?
It looks like he almost drove in the back of Adam, caught him out very quickly, and he's now on the back foot to McLeod by the looks of things. So Adam, yeah, realised his mistake, stopped it, turned it, got his foot on the back of the loud pedal, and managed to gap him back down the
Lakeside Straight.
Lakeside Straight.
That's the one. So Phil Keane it is leading the way, and yes, Seb Morris having been backed into, as it were. Callum McLeod now has to get his elbows out and go defensive. In fifth place, Nicky Team, who is always spectacular, always hugely committed, is Nicky Team, former Porsche Super Cup champion, coming down towards the Hislop chicane. So this is the battle, third, fourth and fifth. Suddenly Seb Morris's life has changed. No longer is he attacking. Suddenly he's got to go and really defend like crazy, and that means he's losing touch with the top two.
That number 2 TF Sport squad really could do with a good race as well, couldn't they? After everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for them in the previous race. Of course, they will therefore, the one benefit of that, they will not carry any success penalties into the pit stops, and Nicky Team is in 5th place already. For him, I guess, the target really is Adam Christodoulou, isn't it? Because he's the highest placed car that will not serve extra time in the pit lane. So whichever of those cars is highest up before pit stops should, if all things are equal, maintain the lead position once the pit stops are all done. So Nicky Team will very much have his sights set on the second place car for the time being. The leader streak across the line. The GT4 leaders are down at Lodge Corner, still in the same order for the top three, and in fact I think the top 4 or 5 or so are the same. Side-by-side action behind them. The number 5 McLaren there of Lewis Proctor, unfortunately losing a bit of ground there. The 58 car goes through. That is Luke Williams, who was third in the first race. They will have 5 extra seconds to serve at the pit stop, so the more ground gain now the better.
It's just a fabulous sight as watching them come pouring over the line. Luke Williams, another defectee from single-seaters into GT racing, but it's still Seb Prio that leads the way. Scott Malvern is going after him. Another little battle there, you can see 77 coming under attack as they 99 coming under attack as they go through Cascades, the TF Sport car lower down the order in GT4, so battles rage all the way. 47 still, Johnny Adam a little bit stuck here. He can't find a way through. This goes back to what we've been discussing earlier about the Astons just being a bit flat, a bit down on power compared to others, but Johnny Adam certainly is no slouch, and he's doing his level best to get up the order. It's Nicky Team upholding honours at the moment. Now the BMW M6, a great car to have in the championship, David, one you know well, and here you can see the Century Motorsport car behind us looking to try to make progress.
This is where cut away, but this is where the BMs make up the time. They've been purple in the speed traps, which meaning they're fastest out of all of the cars. So yeah, this is where Johnny's potentially going to come under pressure here. So if we can see here on the M6 are just closing, so it's got some grunt, the V8 4.2 twin turbo motor there versus the V8 of the Mercedes derived Aston Martin engine.
Yeah, new this year. So Johnny Adam goes through. He in turn is going after the Bradley Ellis Aston through Old Hall Corner, looking back at the number 3 Mercedes, BMW rather, in 10th place. Ben Green at the wheel of it as they drop downhill. 43 minutes of the race to go, and up front GT3 is sort of calming down a little bit now. GT4 perhaps is where the drama is going to come from, and there it is, look, between the two McLarens heading over the timing line. So you've got there Luke Williams going after the Tolman car of Josh Smith, and also a challenge is made on the inside by 95, the TF Aston. That's Josh Price going through, riding the curb, and Josh Price just gaining a place there.
Yeah, nice move that was made, wasn't it, across the start finish line. McLaren's getting themselves absolutely together again. And speaking of getting together, that's the 42 BMW assaulting the 95 Aston Martin. 42 was started by Jacob Matthiessen, 95 by Josh Price. Well, he hasn't run out of touring cars, so I suppose he's well versed being muscled around a little bit. He will still, I'm sure, have complaints about that one though, because that was a rather robust move. But either way, Josh loses the position, and Jacob, who started 2 places behind him, is now 1 place in front on the road. But yes, you're right, GT4, these cars are a little bit less aero dependent. I'll finish that point in a moment, because it's that 42. It is. Yes. A legacy perhaps of the contact at Cascades. It does seem a little coincidental, doesn't it, that he's gone off at the very next corner. And unfortunately for Jacob Matthiessen, and indeed for Century Motorsports GT4 arm in general this weekend, things have not gone particularly to plan. That car was right on the pace at its first appearance at the start of last season. Unfortunately, this weekend things not quite going to plan. But the point I was about to make, David Pittard, is that the GT4 cars are a little bit less reliant on aero, therefore they can stay a little bit more closely bunched, can't they, through the high-speed stuff?
Yeah, a great example is the Aston Vantages. They're the exact same road car models, but you can really see which one is the bigger brother and which one is the younger brother. The GT3 cars, lower, wider, generally look a bit meaner, whereas the GT4s have much more of a relation to their road car counterparts.
So there is some of the GT4 battle pouring over the line. Phil Keen's advantage now after the safety car up to 2.3 seconds. He's done the fastest lap of the race and he's getting away now from the opposition. But number 4, McLaren, which is the car of Josh Smith, goes now through Old Hall Corner, going after the Martin PLOWMAN driven Aston Martin. And that's the car that Kelvin Fletcher will take over as it now turns through the left-hander of Cascades. So we've got the pit window to factor in, but of course, as far as the GT3 teams are concerned, they will want the star driver to stay out for as long as possible. So we won't have, I wouldn't have thought, the same early stops that we did in race 1.
Which means potentially we could have some overlapping of pit windows here, because whereas in race 1 the GT3 cars they'd been gone by the time the GT4 window opened, this time around there is that 4-minute overlap, isn't there? So that's something maybe to take into account. Is it worth leaving your pro driver out for a few laps and then risking congestion in the pit lane, or do you sort of hope that the GT4 teams have much the same idea and stay out longer as well? So all will be revealed within the next few minutes, because the pit window will open in 2.5 minutes time. I don't think we'll see many takers straight away, but it is only a 10-minute window which gets stopped up. Yeah,
this is where the guys on the pit wall looking at all the data and looking at track position and trying to estimate what a 70-second stop plus whatever success time you've got will do to bring you back into the traffic. There is plenty of traffic going into Knickerbrook Corner, and that little battle pack still being headed by the Josh Smith McLaren as they climb the hill. Smith, I think, is ahead now of Martin PLOWMAN, so we've had a change there. Matt George going great guns, isn't he, in the Jaguar within GT4, still running in 3rd within the GT4 division, in which you've got the GT4 Silvers and the Pro-Ams, but an excellent drive there by the Jaguar as they come down now towards the right-hander of Lodge Corner. So Phil Keen has done 10 laps, he leads by 2.8 seconds. And 11 of Martin PLOWMAN there, trying to get himself back onto the tail of the McLaren. Seb Prio still leading in GT4. Scott Malvern is 2nd in GT4, and the gap between them is 2.3 seconds as the rest of the field now falls down through Old Hall. The McLarens, David, at the moment not having things their own way, certainly compared to race 1.
Yeah, it's interesting, the second race format, where the pros of the Pro-Am featured GT4 cars with that slightly lighter cars of 15 kilos. Have all qualified at the front, the likes of Malvern and Broadhurst in particular, in the 2 Mercs. It really shows where there may not be a huge amount of pure pace division between the pros and the silver drivers, but with those 15 extra kilos it really adds up to it, so it really mixes up the grid, which makes for great, big slide there from Luke Williams, mix up the variety of the grid and produces a mega action.
It's great to see these McLarens going so well. It was a double win for McLaren in GT4 European Series at Monza last weekend. And here you've got the cars, part of the customer racing programme, being run by independent teams, 2 separate teams, very evenly matched indeed. Seb Morris there, going through Old Hall Corner, 3/10 of a second back from Adam Christodoulou now, but look at the way that Phil Keen has just escaped up the road. We know that Adam Christo is not slow, but he can do nothing at the moment, so busy is he defending that second place. Seb Morris runs 3rd, Callum McLeod is in 4th, bearing in mind that he started on the outside of the front row of the grid. He'll be pretty frustrated about this, I would have thought, and 5th is Nicky T.
You make the point about Phil Keen pulling away here, which is true. However, he's had about 5 or 6 laps now or so since the safety car, and in the first couple of laps of the initial start, he'd already pulled a second or so at that stage. So although he is pulling away, it's not quite enough. It's not quite at the rate at which maybe he was pulling away at the initial start, because of course at that point Christodoulou really had his arms full of keeping Seb Morris behind. They see the gap, but bear in mind the car in second place, the Mercedes, will not have to serve any extra time with the pit stop. So as long as Christodoulou stays within 7 seconds of Keane, they're almost guaranteed to come out as the race leaders post pit stops, as long as their stops go according to plan. Now this gap appears to have come back down again, doesn't it? There's number 3 Century Motorsport BMW of Ben Green harrying the Johnny Adam driven Aston Martin in front, and they're close now going into that part of the circuit, David Pittard, that you were saying the BMW excels at.
There you go, that's very menacing front end there, just getting bigger and bigger in the rear view camera of the from looking back from the Aston. A little bit of aero wash you get from following that close to the car ahead, so no doubt Ben will be picking up a little bit of understeer through Druids. He's trying to square the corner off, turn in late, cut back to the inside, so that he doesn't get affected too much by that. But here's his main opportunities. So see if he can use the grunt of the BM. But unsettling someone like Johnny Adam, that's going to be tough. I mean, it's Ben's first race in a GT3 car, and he's up against the Master. So let's see what the rookie versus the Master can do.
He's belying his lack of experience, though, isn't he? Now, this battle for second place is looking nice, because you've got Adam Christodoulou under attack now from Seb Morris, the Bentley having a real push here. The second part of this race is going to be fascinating, because the disparity across some of the AMs, I'm trying to think who of the AMs is going to be the overall quickest. You sort of get to Rick Parfitt as a potential. So that Bentley might lose 10 seconds, but in terms of, 10 seconds in the pit stop, but in terms of lap times, Rick Parfitt should get back into the game. Richard Neary has been around a long time, but relatively not done that much in a GT3 car, only 2 or 3 seasons worth. And Adam Ballard will take over from Phil Keane, new into GT3 this year. So the AM can make quite a difference, and if you've got a good AM or the lower graded driver, then you're in the pound seats for the second stint.
Yeah, the pros are separated by tenths of seconds, yes. And you can see from what you on the screen that they're still running almost nose to tail, whereas the AMs can vary by seconds. So as a pro driver, it's down to you to coach your amateur driver, give them a little bit more seat time in qualifying and practice, because if they gain half a second versus you gaining half a tenth, that's going to make a big difference.
So here you are, second and third, nose to tail then as they come through Lodge Corner. The pit window is open for the GT3 cars if they wish to take it. Well, Phil Keane doesn't. He's going to stay out for as long as he possibly can. You're riding now with Seb Morris as they go down towards Old Hall Corner. He closes under braking, but wasn't near enough there, David, was he, to think about a proper move?
Nah, I think he's maybe got a little bit more pace than Adam at the moment. So he's just showing his nose, saying, come on, Adam, get a move on here. He's got a 10-second deficit to overcome, so as soon as he can clear Adam, the more opportunity he gives Rick to then really be in the mix for the second half of the race.
There's 96 in the pit lane, so that's an early stop, and that means that Brad Ellis gives way to Ollie Wilkinson, who's come from Ginetta Racing initially. Bradley Ellis, former champion, so that could be a shrewd move. Come in, do the driver change when there's absolutely no traffic in the pit lane, but still would have thought Bradley Ellis would have gone a bit longer there.
Yeah, that surprised me. He is by far away the earliest GT3 pitter, isn't he? We were talking just now about the relative pace of the AM drivers. Well, he qualified, for what it's worth, on Saturday. Ian Logie was the fastest AM driver by quite some way. He was 6/10 quicker than Ryan Ratcliffe, who was a silver driver, so not in the truest sense of the word, maybe a pure AM. And Sam DeHaan was another 6 and a bit tenths further back. So Ian Logie, in theory, should be the fastest of the AM drivers if he can replicate that qualifying pace. And because of their issues early on, they should be in with good track position, because they have no success penalty to serve.
Exactly right. Now look at this in GT4. Take a sharp intake of breath as they all descend upon Lodge Corner. And how many in the line? 10, maybe, even more, as they all funnel through. And up Dearly, we've got 1 or 2 of the GT3 stops, as I say, cycling through. And now, of course, the danger is you finish your pit stop and you come out in an almost 3-wide battle, diving down towards Old Hall Corner on the inside line there. Aaron Taylor-Smith in the Mustang, and he goes through, gains a couple of spots. Brave move that in the race performance car. So Aaron Taylor-Smith with a touring car move goes through. And there's drama there as off their own ploughs. The Academy 62 Aston Martin, is it ever going to stop? It will eventually, up against the tyres, I'm afraid, and that was Will Moore at the wheel of it. We've also got 97, which is Tom Canning and Ash Hound's car, being been given a penalty for causing a collision against 77 Mercedes, so number 97 will get a 30-second stop-go penalty, but Will Moore spectacularly off the road.
And guess who's right in the middle of all of this? Phil Keane, your race leader. He's just caught the traffic just as it all kicked off amongst them. So Phil Keane, I'm sure that's exactly what he wanted to see in front of him as he came across the start-finish line and down to Cascades. He's now more or less picked his way through most of them, but that would have focused his attention, definitely. There's the 96 car that has made its pit stop, so that is now being piloted by Oliver Wilkinson. And the benefit, of course, here is that he's out in clean air. Callum McLeod has also pitted in the number 6 car, interestingly. The theory here, I guess, being, well, they're about to catch the GT4 cars. If we get our pit stop out of the way now, get back out in some clean air, maybe we can actually negate some of that advantage that we would have had by leaving the pro end.
It might also be that there's a safety car to come, and that might help or hinder teams accordingly. So Ian Logie leaving the pit lane. There's a big round of applause there for Will Moore, Aston Martin enthusiast, who's okay. But David, this was quite a moment.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a huge one, but he's got away with that big time. He's just come off at an angle enough. He's missed one barrier, he's missed another barrier and hit some tyres. I mean, I'd choose tyres over an Arco wall any day, so he's got away with that one. Looks like there's a little touch of wheels just going over the crest there, and it's just pitched the car to the inside. So a little bit side-by-side contact with the HHC boys again. So yeah, they're getting their elbows out this weekend.
Indeed, there's an enormous laundry bill inside the Aston Martin, but no real damage. So that car is out of the race. There, into the race, is now Brian Ratcliffe. He's taken over from Glyn Geddy and got that extra penalty out of the way, but we are still under a green flag. The car having gone so far across the gravel, it's out of harm's way pretty much, so no sign yet of a safety car. And the that you heard from David was that there was a bit of falling over in the pit lane. Some came in and some came out.
Yeah, so this is what I sort of thought might happen. We've got GT3 and GT4 cars pitting at the same time, and the GT4 with the 97 serving its stop-go penalty, as the 47 with Johnny Adam was in for its pit stop and driver change. So this is sort of what we thought might happen, because the GT4 pit lane window is now open, but the GT3 window is still open, and over half of the GT3 field, easy for me to say, has yet to stop. So this could get rather busy, because we presume, when does the pit lane window close? At 32 minutes. So they've got another 2 laps probably that they can leave the pro drivers out in GT3, and then they must come to the pit lane. So we could have over half the field potentially pitting at more or less the same time. Phil Keane, the race leader still, by only 2.8 seconds now as well. So in traffic, he's losing a little bit of ground here.
He is indeed. There's also, of course, that yellow flag zone that will have gone against him. And so it is then the the Lamborghini of Phil Keane. I hesitate because Adam Ballard's name is on the timing screen, but it's not yet made a pit stop, so I'm not quite sure how that's happened. Into the pit lane anyway, now that car comes. I think possibly what has happened is that Phil Keane flicked the transponder, getting ready for the pit stop, but he's in now, so Adam Christodoulou takes over the lead of the race. Out gets Phil Keane, in gets Adam Ballard. So if there are lots of back markers, you might as well bail, because you're not achieving anything for a lap time, and you come. But now pretty much everybody has come in, and don't forget this pit stop is going to be 7 seconds longer than anybody else's, because of the success that they have to carry coming into this. This looking out of the front of number 72, this is the view that Adam Ballard will have going into the second part of the race. And David, for a driver, this pit stop, whether you're taking over or bringing the car in, there's quite a long checklist of things to get done.
Yeah, definitely. Driver ID, getting the belts out of the way so you can quickly get your new teammate in. Then once you're out, new driver back in. That BMW's brakes are being worked pretty hard there, smoky, but because they're 70 seconds or so, that should be in and out quick enough. Maybe a quick puff of the fire extinguisher and it'll be good to go again.
So there is 72 now. Adam Ballard at the wheel of that car down the pit road, goes past 35. Oh, hello, there's Aston Martin being pushed into the fast lane, ready to go. That's going to be the Mark Farmer car. So there you go, that Aston has gained on the pit stops because it's had a stop 7 seconds shorter. And as they dive down through Old Hall Corner, Ian Logie is on track, and there you can see the Mercedes, which is going to just about jump ahead. There's a yellow flag zone though, they're approaching and coming out of the pits. That's all very touch and go. But there, look, you've got Mark Farmer just ahead of Sam DeHaan now with the number 69 Lamborghini, ahead of Ian Logie, who's really throwing everything at this, and then behind them, fresh into the race, Adam Ballard. Loggie's a man on a mission, isn't he?
He is, and so too is Sam DeHaan, because he just got up the inside of the 47 Aston Martin, and there's a bit of contact. Oh no! Sorry, number 2 Aston Martin, excuse me. Oh dearie me. Not the first time we've seen that today, unfortunately. The number 2 Aston Martin pointing the wrong way, and once again the luckless Mark Farmer, who didn't appear to do too much wrong there. He was trying to open the door for Sam Tahan, who was up the inside of Island Bend, and it looked as though, I think it was Ian Loggy, wasn't it, was trying to follow him through, and there simply wasn't room. Here's the replay, David, talk us through it.
I think he's been spooked very slightly by Tahan up the inside, and I've just gotten the marbles fresh out the pits. I think he's just made a mistake there, touched the grass. You're lucky to get away with a small moment at a corner like Ireland, but he's lived up to his name this weekend of farming.
Absolutely, I'm afraid he went all agricultural again, and now he stalled it, and he's half on, half off the track, and that rear wheel's not touching the ground, so you know what's going to come next, don't you? It did look, I agree with David, as though he just got on the marbles rather than contact there, but we'll see. But right now he's got bigger strife, which is that the weight all at the front means that rear wheel is hardly touching the ground, and try as he might, he can't get the car back into the race. You've just had Adam Christodoulou give way to Richard Neary in the ABBA Mercedes, and the pit lane light is on green, so Richard Neary goes back into the race. I'm waiting to see any yellow flags come out for that incident, but for the moment we are still under green flag conditions. Mark Farmer's car off the road. Peter Daly, the race director, will be looking at all the CCTV pictures as well as this feed, and there's one yellow flag waving on the way down to Cascade, but that's from the earlier incident. So at the end of the next lap we'll have a proper race order, but they're going through is number 31, which is now Rick Parfitt in the race 1 winning Bentley. He's up through the traffic. Safety cars being deployed, so the safety car will be required, and the job was done just there by Rick Parfitt. Right, we're under safety car conditions, the boards and flags go, that's the important thing, to get everybody to slow right down, and then the safety car will be called for. It is just outside of our window and it's not yet moved, but the safety car is going to be deployed, so as soon as the race leader approaches, then the indication will be given that it can go. 19 is in, and that means that Jade Buford will take over from Chad McCumbee. They look great, these Mustangs. They sound excellent as well, and they're a big asset to the championship, although inevitably other teams are saying, oh, too quick, but anyway, they didn't win race 1, so the jury is still out. Right, this is the onboard, which might show us more about the incident for Mark Farmer. Runs wide, gets a wheel on the grass, round he goes. Ian Loggy was close, but I'm not convinced there was a nudge, but it was close, even if there wasn't.
I think if there was contact, it was after the Aston Martin had started to rotate. So, yeah, on second viewing, I tend to agree with you there. What this will do, of course, this safety car, as far as GT3 and GT4 is concerned, is it now allows those who have had to spend longer in the pit lane and therefore lost ground to regain the ground. This is when they want a safety car. Now, after the pit stops, yeah, throw as many safety cars as you like, because then they can close back in. It looks as though the number 8 Mercedes is your race leader. It wasn't by a huge margin, admittedly, over the 69 Sam Tahan-driven Lamborghini. In fact, the top 4 cars were pretty much as one anyway, so they won't bunch up all that much more. The real beneficiary here, in a way, is our race 1 winning car, isn't it? Because Rick Parfitt in the 31 Aston Martin, who got into that 6th position, didn't he? Just, we believe, in time before the yellow flags came out. He was in excess of 15 seconds off the race lead. He won't be any more.
Yeah, indeed, but he has then got to try and find a way past Andrew Howard. The leading 4, there you can see them, are together. There are no back markers, so it's game on between them when we go racing. 5th is Andrew Howard, 6th is Rick Parfitt, 7th is Dominic Paul, 8th is Adrian Wilmot, 9th Ollie Wilkinson, and then 10th Graham Davidson in for Johnny Adam. So this is the incident zone. That car needs to be given a shove. I mean, it's got away without any damage, and yet just by a few inches, David, it's in the wrong place on Oulton Park's tarmac, or half the tarmac, half the grass, and it's interrupted the race.
Yeah, it's just a big shame that, because yeah, this safety car throws the GT4 field certainly into a little bit of chaos, because it's halfway through their pit stop window. GT3s aren't too affected by it, no. And it's quite good to group the front 4 quite nicely, so we're going to have a really good race once we get going. It shouldn't take too long for them to just nudge Mark back onto the tarmac again and then get him going. But where the GT4s will end up, I'm not sure. We'll need a few laps for that to play out.
But from the marshal's point of view, you need to wait a little bit until everybody's in a line before you've got the space to go out there and do the work. It might only be one push, but until everyone's in a line and there is the safety for you to go out there, you can't do anything.
Exactly. I mean, Ireland's relatively blind going through there with a big barrier on the inside, so yeah, stepping out into one of the fastest parts of the circuit is a brave thing to do. So yeah, hats off to all those marshals out there that give up their time to allow us to go racing. Yeah, so big thanks to those guys.
Indeed, all volunteers, and we couldn't have racing without them, and there they are. Now discussing whether they've had enough shredded wheat for breakfast to give this car a shove. And of course, a rather frustrated Nicky Team has been watching this from the pit lane. He's with Andy.
Yeah, I've got a understandably frustrated Nicky here. Nicky, how are you feeling right now?
Probably some words I don't want to say to the live viewers out there. Thank you for watching anyway, but Jesus Christ, what a weekend.
It's not been as you'd predicted, has it?
No, and I don't think I've tried anything like this before. It's just another level.
I should quickly apologise for your use of language there, although it's Easter weekend, maybe you were meaning religious connotations. Tell me, you obviously were watching. Tell me what was going through your mind when you saw what happened with Mark?
I don't know, I start to get used to it, so yeah, I don't know. Just a bad weekend for us all. Quite good on a single lap pace. The Aston is just amazing around here, but just lacking a little bit on torque, but that's how it is. But still, yeah, really enjoyed coming here to Oulton Park, at least enjoying to drive the new car here on this awesome circuit. So that's the only thing I will take away from this weekend.
And that's something. Okay, thanks, mate. We'll see you in the next round. Appreciate it. Back to you guys.
Well refereed, Andy. Not entirely sure that partnership has gelled this weekend. It's a very frustrating Nicky Team. Mark Farmer has, as we saw in race 1 and in race 2, had a fair number of moments, but he's no dummy. I mean, he's a race winner in British GT, but it's the first time, of course, that they are together. A new co-driver for Mark Farmer, John Barnes, having been there last year, and Nicky, who is a professional driver, gets on with the job, goes absolutely flat out, and then loses a decent result because of a co-driver spinning again. You can understand the frustration.
Well, absolutely, but naturally it is a harder time for the AM drivers to acclimatise to a new car. Now, this is what professional racing drivers do. They jump from one racing car to another in the space of a couple of days, or less than that sometimes, whereas for the AM drivers, you know, it takes them a bit longer to pick things up, and that's what the pro is there to do. It essentially is to give guidance and tuition and to help the AM driver improve their pace and their confidence in the car. So some frustration now. I'm sure they'll get over it for Snetterton, and they'll again go to Snetterton with no pit stop penalties to have to serve, and eventually I'm sure it must all come good for them.
I can't think of races where Nicky Team has made mistakes, so that they are quietly forgotten about while he addresses Mark Farmer's moments. But anyway, that car frustratingly is out of the race, and we are behind the safety car, and under the safety car we have that's 62, isn't it? Will Moore, I think, who's being brought out of the gravel. Phew, thankfully. That was the car at Cascade, so it's a double clear-up operation here. Get that one out of the way as well, because that was the car that tobogganed its way down towards Cascades a few laps back. Right, so we're going to end up with, probably 15 or 16 minutes on the restart here, and it is Richard Neary in the green Mercedes that leads the way, from Sam Dehaan in second spot, Ian Logie third, Adam Ballon is fourth, Andrew Howard is fifth, sixth is Rick Parfitt, seventh is Dominic Paul, eighth Adrian Wilmot, ninth now Ollie Wilkinson, and 10th is Graham Davidson. And in GT4, where are we up to there after the pit stops? Just let them come over the timing line and double check that the order has settled down, because I think we're going to have the Scott Maxwell, no, the 66, isn't it, that's going to take over the race lead. Nick Jones Mercedes that Scott Malvern started. Let's just double check, because that should be the next car to break the timing beam. Goes through. So it should be, as I say now, number 66 Mercedes from the 44 Jaguar. There's Mark Farmer's car that has been brought out of harm's way, and now probably can even drive back if the race director is happy. Got another BMW in the pit lane as well as the stop cycle through.
We've got a situation here, David, where the top, I think, 4 or 5 GT4 cars are going to gain a lap on the rest of the field. The others, because they had to pit behind the safety car, have got trapped a lap down. That's why we were waiting for the leaders to turn up. So the 66 Mercedes is leading the way now. As you quite rightly said, that is now being piloted by Scott Malvern. Second place is going to be Steve McCulley in 44, I think. And then down to third for the 15 Mustang. So again, Multimatic losing a bit of time in the pit lane, and Scott Maxwell now at the wheel of that car.
But they're on the lead lap.
Yes, indeed. So we have I think the top 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, literally on the lead lap. The rest of them technically will be on the lead lap, but they're trapped somewhere between the lead GT3 car and the lead GT4, so they won't be waved through, and that really has cost them any chance of a podium.
Unfortunately. So Nick Jones in for Scott Malvern leads the way. Steve McCulley is in second place, and they're both Pro-Am GT4 cars. Third, Scott Maxwell, that's a Silver Cup GT4 car. Then you've got Kelvin Fletcher, who should get on well with Mark Farmer given his character from Emmerdale in years past. And then you've got in fifth in GT4, number 20, which is now Michael O'Brien. in the McLaren. And as Andy says, the rest of GT4 are 2/3 or so of a lap back. Cars now funneling their way down through his lots. But yeah, Scott Maxwell, I think, could still be one to watch there, because he's effectively now, what, 13 seconds or so off the class lead, and that's a Silver Cup car. If you find cars with the yellow and pink background to the number, they're an AM, and a black background is a Silver Cup. The different backgrounds to assist with identification for the class system and the individual competitions therein. But all of this eating into the remaining time. But yeah, I still think that Mustang could yet take GT4. It's on the lead lap, 13 seconds back. We know that Scott Maxwell is quick. Bring it on.
What I'm forgetting, of course, with that car is that because it's a Silver Cup car, it spends an extra 15 seconds, I think, isn't it, in the pit lane.
That's right, yeah.
That's why they're losing time during the pit stops. It also carries an extra 15 kilos of ballast as a result of that. Now, it hasn't really hampered their on-track performance, but that will explain this fairly consistent loss of ground in the pit lane. But that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to, you know, stop a driveline that, in theory, over a race distance should be quicker than a pro-am pairing. It's designed to stop them running away with it and give them some work to do in the second half of the race.
And also it got an extra bit of weight from Saturday's qualifying just to try and even things out as well. So the team has coped well with this. We're going to go racing this time. Mark Farmer has brought the Aston back into the pit lane, and that car going no further. Tom Ferrier, whose team operates it, busy talking to Johnny Adam on the pit wall. Another car that keeps seeming to be in and out of the pit lane is 43, which is the Andrew Gordon Colebrook BMW M4 that's back into the pit lane. So 17 minutes on the clock, and let's hear from Phil Keane. He dominated his stint. What can Adam Ballon do in part two? Andy, over to you.
So Phil, how are you feeling it's going now? It's pretty tense, isn't it?
Yeah, I know we had a good start. It's a shame about the safety car, really. That hurt us a little bit. Obviously destroyed the lead we built up, managed to build up a little bit more, but you know, it was just not really enough. So unfortunately we're back in fourth now, but we'll have to see how Adam gets on the sprint to the finish. I mean, he was well up for this ahead of the race. Do you reckon he's got the sort of skills to get up there and mix it up on the podium? Yeah, I mean, look, we finished second in the first race. We're going to score good points in this race. The aim is just to beat Seb and Rick to, you know, hopefully take the lead in the championship. That's our goal, to score points. So, you know, but obviously if he can make progress, then that's great. But, you know, just stay out of trouble and finish. The tactics are already coming into play. Are you on the radio to him at all and giving him a few pointers? No, you know, he doesn't like too much radio communication, but, you know, we tell him just you know, what we need to tell him to get his mind in the game, and I'm sure he'll do fine, you know. All right, there's confidence. Thanks, mate. Cheers, Phil. Appreciate it.
So Phil Keane watching on, and that car in fourth place. So going to go racing this time. Lights are out, and Richard Neary leads the way then, and Chris Tadulo having done the hard yards, but Ian Loggy having taken a pole position in his qualifying session, now third in the queue. But it's going to be interesting, isn't it, for the remainder of this race to see, first of all, who can get through error-free, who's got the pace, who's got the bravery. Richard Neary, who for many, many years was a mainstay of club racing in very, very powerful modified Fords, will lead the cars up dearly, ready to go racing once more. Teenager Sam Dahan is behind him then in the Lamborghini, and Ian Loggy in third in the Mercedes then as we go green, diving down towards Old Hall Corner. No heroic to come yet, but perhaps that's not a bad thing. But Loggy gets a very good run going out of Old Hall Corner there. You see Michael Igoe's Porsche coming under attack from the number 5 McLaren. Eager to get through. That's Jordan Collard. The leaders dive down through Cascades. Ian Loggy has not yet found a place, but he was certainly very rapid, David, wasn't he, going out of Old Hall that time?
Yeah, I think Sam went in a little bit hot, had a little bit of a wiggle mid-corner, and therefore affected his exit speed. And yeah, Ian had a good run. Not quite close enough to challenge on the way into Cascades. But it'll be interesting to see. I think there's going to be a little bit of a bottleneck behind Richard Neary here, so it'll be interesting to see how these guys can think up some overtakes around this tricky circuit.
Yeah, Richard Neary, and he just has to keep his elbows out now and hang on in there. As long as he doesn't make a mistake and he puts the car in the middle of the road, can he hang on for 14.5 minutes?
You make it sound a lot easier than I think it will be, because Richard has got some serious pressure here from the very rapid youngster Sam Dahan, who had a peek to the outside there. We've got BMWs at play as well, and thankfully I think that the number 9 car of Adrian Wilmot backed out of the move he was attempting on the number 3 of Dominic Paul. There's the number 31, race 1 winner Rick Parfit. Now what can he do about Andrew Howard? He's all over the Aston Martin as it goes over Clay Hill. Now, we've seen some overtaking into Druids. We've also seen that Bentley making contact with GT4 cars at Druids today, so I'm sure Rick, always a sensible head on Rick's shoulders, isn't there? He knows that they've bagged some good points in race 1. From now on, anything else they get is a bonus, but he's drawing alongside now to the outside into Lodge Corner. He won't go right around the outside, but watch for the cutback on the exit. The Bentley tees it up. Beautiful timing for the onboard as well, and he's back up the inside. That was textbook stuff there, wasn't it, David Pittard? Yeah, set him up good and proper there. It's very difficult to get traction down out of the final corner there, but yeah, putting Andrew Howard on the inside there, easy cutback, got the traction down, job done. Nice move.
There is a 13-second stop-go penalty for number 95 out of GT4, Patrick Kimball and Josh Price's Aston Martin for pit lane speeding. The GT3 battle blast out of Cascades, and Richard Neary is still in charge, 0.3 of a second to the good. Sam DeHaan going after him, and then in third place, really pushing hard as best he can, Ian Loggie there in fourth, Adam Ballon, and Rick Parfitt then up into fifth place, could yet gain further ground before the very end. In GT4 it is still Nick Jones ahead of Steve McCulley. Scott Maxwell is third, but they've all bunched right up in GT4, the top three as one now.
This is working perfectly, I would say, for the Bentley of Rick Parfitt. It's also working fairly well for Sam DeHaan, because this time he's fully alongside over Hilltop. Goes to the outside of Richard Neary. I doubt he'll try and force the issue too much there, but the Bentley, I couldn't see it for a second there, so close was it tucked up behind the... no, I can't see it. Hang on, where is it? Where's Rick Parfitt gone? Rick Parfitt, I'm pretty sure, is no longer there in fifth position. No, he's off! Rick Parfitt's off! Now that's up at Shell, is it? I think he's gone off into the barriers. Rick Parfitt, just as things were starting to come to him, that was the curse of the commentator, wasn't it? He strayed off the road and dropping down the order. So Rick Parfitt off the road. We know not how that happened, but what a shame. It really looked as though this race, a bit like race 1, but in a different way, was starting to fall into his lap.
It's almost like he's done a Mark Farmer and he can't get off the grass. There he is being pushed back. So is that Shell, or is he looped it coming out of Britain's? He's lost it coming out of the chicane, hasn't he? So he's either rattled the curb and spun it, or he's had a tap, but the leaders go side by side into Old Hall Corner. It is still just Richard Neary ahead, but right on his tail is under Hunter. Look at Ian Loggie. It's 3, it's 4 for the lead. Adam Ballon right there in fourth place. Richard Neary may not have the pace, but he's got the width of the car. Up the curb goes Sam DeHaan. This is looking very leery indeed. DeHaan gets away with that as they turn down through Cascades now. Along Lakeside Straight they go. In seventh place, Adrian Wilmot is being given a 4-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Richard Neary leads the way, but David, it is all kicking off behind him, and you can see now the frustration and the errors even from 1 or 2 being offered up now, because it's crunch time.
I think they're getting pressure from behind. They all feel like they're being held up beforehand. And yeah, like I say, I think there's a little bit of a cork in a bottle effect happening here. We've lost one already. Parfitt's looped it out of the chicane here. He's going now right in front of the leaders. Yeah, expect fireworks, I think.
Indeed, here are the leaders. DeHaan again goes to the inside. Richard Neary, experienced driver, covers the move, but he goes a little bit wide. DeHaan goes round the outside of him. He's got the race lead. Yes, Ian Loggie gets squeezed up to the grass. And round the outside goes Adam Ballon. Oh, no, you don't, says Loggie. So Ballon now runs wide, and here comes Andrew Howard up the inside. He's got past 1. Can he get past 2 as they climb up Clay Hill? No, but he splits the pair. So it all kicks off down at Hislops, and Sam DeHaan is the new race leader. Richard Neary is down in second place. That was in the post, wasn't it? You knew something was coming.
Yeah, the touch paper had been lit. It was only a matter of time. Yeah, just outbrakes himself there. Sam DeHaan pounces on the manoeuvre straight away. Ian Loggie couldn't quite get round the outside. A little bit of contact with Ballon. It was a shame that he then got jumped by Andrew Howard, but it's good to see him now up in the running up high.
One for the pit lane as well, though, which I think was the Wilmot car for its stop-go. But it's DeHaan then leading from Neary by 1 second, but Andy, we're not done yet.
No, and that number 3 BMW, just as we saw in race 1, is trailing a bit of its rear bumper as well. Looking backwards now, excuse me, at the Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin then, through Cascades. We're running wide, that's going to open the door nicely. Well, I thought it might have done anyway for the 96 car running down the Lakeside Straight. Ollie Wilkinson flashing the lights now at Graham Davidson's Aston Martin as they go down through Island Bend. Sam DeHaan is starting to check out now. He pulled a second over Richard Neary at the start of the lap. There's the bumper on the other BMW. It's not been a good lap for Century Motorsport. One car in for a penalty, the other one with damage to the rear. Sam DeHaan's got another BMW from Century Motorsport in front of him as they go through the Britain chicane. David Pittard, that bumper could really do with falling all the way off, couldn't it?
Yes. A few years ago, Gordon Shidden aimed himself at a piece of trackside furniture and ripped off the bumper. So I'm not sure if Ben Green will be on the radio to tell his teammate to try and do the same. Take as much gird as you can, Dom, to rip the rear bumper off.
Because the danger is you get a meatball flag and you're brought in and you sacrifice the race up, because that's going to be dangerous. The scrutineers may feel. John Crooks, the series scrutineer, and he may want that in the pits to be eliminated from the car, otherwise it could end up going into somebody else's face. Now, Rick Parfitt off the road, we know not why. Seb Morris might have the answer. He's with Andy J.
Yeah, let's find out, shall we? Seb, can you just talk us through what happened as you saw it to Rick?
I don't know. I couldn't see any coverage, just saw him in the wall. We're very lucky not to have lost a lap. I just know he couldn't get it restarted. Real shame.
Is there enough time to salvage anything from the race, do you think?
Well, you know, I think we'll pick up whatever points you get for last place in GT3, to be honest, and we've only got 10 minutes left of the race, so if it was an endurance race it wouldn't be over, but you know, unfortunately he's made that mistake. He said the car got away from him, so you know, these things happen, and you know, we're in Pro-Am racing and sometimes they make mistakes, so you know, won't take anything away from him. He's driven great all weekend, so
thanks, Seb, appreciate it. Sorry about that.
Ian Logie off the road down at Cascades. Ian Logie way wide over the grass, tumbles down the order, so Richard Neary, who was under attack, hangs on to second place, and others of course have just gained ground.
It's all going on, isn't it? Still 8 minutes to go in this one as well. The bumper is still grimly hanging on to the back of the number 3 Dominic Paul driven Century Motorsport BMW. Got a few more cars having to serve Stopco penalties as well. Sam Smelt in the 23 Ford Mustang has just been in. This meanwhile is the 72 Aston Martin, which is ducking and diving, trying to find a way past Andrew Howard. Adam Ballon now, former Lotus racer, at the wheel of the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini, and Howard a bit wide of the apex at Nicker Brook, but picks up the throttle well enough on the exit of the corner. Ian Lockie's off was in an attempt to get past Richard Neary, wasn't it? But the outside line at Cascades offering very little grip, and you're quite right, this therefore now becomes the fight for third place, but they both, from what we've seen so far, ought to have the pace to close back in on Richard Neary, I would suspect.
Indeed, who is losing touch there now with Sam DeHaan, so there is Neary in second place, so Neary and yet so far. In third place you've now got the Howard versus Ballon versus Paul battle, and still the bodywork trails as they come out of Lodge Corner up Deer Leap. So Sam DeHaan leads with 7 minutes on the clock. Richard Neary second in the Lamborghini. Andrew Howard into the top 3 now in the Beach Dean Aston. Fourth is Adam Ballon's Lamborghini. Fifth is Dominic Paul. What's going on in GT4, incidentally, is that it is still Nick Jones ahead of Steve McCulley, with Scott Maxwell next up, and the three of them are almost together. There is number 43, the lapped BMW, which is now back in the hands of Andrew Gordon Colebrook. And where are we for the GT4 lead battle? Well, as I say, there are 3 of them as one pretty much there, with traffic also trying to negotiate battles lower down the order. 6 minutes and change are on the clock, but the leading GT4 car, number 66 Mercedes, Nick Jones, having taken over from Scott Malvern. That little gaggle you see are effectively back markers. Now there is the class leader. Over the line goes 66, and now look behind, the Mustang is up into second place. He's got to go around the outside of traffic. The yellow Aston there is a back marker, so ignore that from the battle. But where is the Mustang? He can't find a way through, and there are no blue flags being waved to the back marker either, so he's stuck for the moment there, Scott Maxwell. That Aston Martin needs to get out of the way, either by a blue flag from a marshal, of which there are no blue flags being shown at the moment, or by the team being on the radio. But this is not helping Scott Maxwell go after the class leader here. He is still stuck behind a car that is on a different lap and should not be defending.
Yes, but of course it's in the same class, and for the marshals they won't necessarily have been able to keep track fully of the complicated situation we've got here in GT4. So they see 2 GT4 cars going roughly the same sort of speed, and maybe, unless they're told, they will just assume that they are fighting for position. But yeah, this is not ideal, is it? Through Britons they go. There is the number 15 Ford Mustang, that is Maxwell that we were talking about, struggling to try and find his way through this GT4 traffic as they head down the hill towards his loss. Once again, the GT4 Beach Dean Aston Martin is not that far behind either. But yeah, frustrating stuff here.
And that was the spinning class leader, was it not? Yes, the Mercedes has gone off the road, and so that helps Scott Maxwell, because he now leads, and Nick Jones has thrown it away coming out of the second part of his laps. So traffic or not, the Mustang now will take over the class lead, and Nick Jones lit up the rears, looped the back of it, he's gone across the grass, and so suddenly things change in GT4. Still, Scott Maxwell can't get past this rather uncooperative Aston Martin that has got, I think it's Ash Hand at the wheel of it now, doing the second stint. But as they come now down towards Lodge Corner, he does lead the class. All he has to do is just sit there now. He doesn't need to worry too much about the back marker, but David, this is big frustration when you can't get past a slower car that you're trying to lap.
Especially when it starts to defend as well. It's through no fault of Ash's. I think he doesn't know technically who he's fighting with. It's more down to the team to radio him, and yeah, just courtesy really. I think the 97 car's a long way off anywhere, any position, so yeah, if the team can get through to him, then that would be good. There you go, you took my advice.
That sort of worked, didn't it? Half the bumpers come off at least of the GT3 Century Motorsport BMW, and it did sort of land in the face rather of the TF Sport Aston Martin behind.
What's that worth, 10 grand?
I dread to think.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's probably 0.3 of a second.
Oh, sorry.
That's the more important rally. Yeah, exactly.
That's the currency you guys
race driver mentality.
Well, GT3 through Lodge Corner. That GT4 battle, by the way, is now nose to tail between the top three, so that's rather tasty. Dare we ever take our eyes off the GT3 scrap, which is still raging on, as we thought might be the case. The gap between second and third is shrinking, but there is your GT4 leader, there is second in GT4, and there is third in GT4. Kelvin Fletcher, in his first weekend racing for the Beach Team squad, of course, is right there, and finally, the 67 Aston Martin does move out of the way, got the message in the end, and now these three, until they find another back marker, are free to race for the podium positions.
So finally the Aston gets out of the way, and so the Tom Canning Ash Hand car it was that was eventually overtaken, so that goes to one side of the road. The leaders go by. Scott Maxwell then heading the class, but as you say, he's now got chasing on behind him the Balfe from McLaren. This is Graham Johnson at the wheel, and then behind him Kelvin Fletcher having the race of his life, isn't he? Kelvin, who we've seen briefly in touring cars, always been a very, very handy peddler, had his race debut at Oulton Park many years ago, and again Maxwell finds traffic in the way, this time number 61 on Ben Hurst, who equally does not understand that he is being lapped and isn't the defending. More flashing of the light. All the teams have an instant messaging service. They can talk to each other, they can talk to race control. I'm surprised they're not using it more to say, come on, look, you're a lap down, get out of the way, because that Aston Martin is doing everything it should not be doing to compromise the race leader in the class. And there is risk being taken here by Scott Maxwell, but David, he doesn't need to be taking, he shouldn't have to be taking.
I can't start to begin to imagine his frustration, really, especially now that the Balfe Motorsport is McLaren right on his tail. Again, the Academy team now need to get on the radio to their driver to tell him to get out of the way.
So that car, admittedly, it's having its own race. It is 8th in the Silver Cup within GT4, the Ben Hurst-driven Aston Martin, but it doesn't have to be defending. The fact that there are lights being flashed doesn't always give you the clue, because, of course, drivers will try that to distract you and make you make a mistake and give up a place that you're legitimately squabbling for. But right now, Scott Maxwell needs to get past. Ben Hurst is on the inside line, but he's not exactly getting out of the way, is he? And Scott Maxwell tries to go around the outside, and look, Graham Johnson buys into this. We've only got 90 seconds of the race to go, and because of back markers, GT4 has now got a three-way battle for leadership.
Yep, out of Knickerbrook they go, and in fairness here to the back marking cars, unless they're told, they won't necessarily know exactly what position the cars behind them are in, so really the onus is on teams here to be passing the message across. Clearly something that isn't happening. What nearly happened there was a challenge for the lead, though, for the number 20 car of Graham Johnson, who had a peek to the inside at Drury's. That cost him speed on the exit of the corner, though, and here comes Kelvin Fletcher. He will potentially attack for second place down into Lodge. There's no way through. Meanwhile, Scott Maxwell's forced high, wide and not so handsome through Lodge corner. Let's hope that didn't end in tears. He's prized the door open. No, still can't get through, as this back-marking Aston Martin not only refuses to get out of the way, but continues to drive defensive lines. Finally, I think he's up the inside and will get that car between himself and his nearest rivals, but that, David, took a lot longer than it should have done.
Absolutely. I'm sure when Ben Hurst watches this back and he realises what was going on, he won't be very impressed and will feel a bit guilty, understandably. But again, the problem is there's no communication coming to the marshals to tell them who to show blue flags to, so the back markers are slightly bewildered, especially with all the jumbles of safety cars as to who is fighting with whom. However, up front, no argument about it, Sam DeHaan is on his last lap now. He's just gone through and he's on his own. Richard Neary is in second place, and then third is everybody else in GT3, because you've got Andrew Howard ahead of Adam Ballon, ahead of Dominic Paul, and a change imminent possibly there, because up the inside looked Ryan Ratcliffe to get ahead of Graham Davidson. That didn't work either, but we've had some great racing, and Sam DeHaan now, David, is in the box seat on this last lap because he's got a gap of 4 seconds.
Yeah, he took the opportunity, he forced Richard into a small error, took the opportunity, had the pace, and yeah, as it's so difficult to pass around here, he's just been able to romp away at the front. Actually, I think Richard's come under a lot of pressure from other drivers, and he's actually done really, really well to sustain that pressure and sustain P2, so hopefully he can hold on for another lap.
Oh, no.
Big one.
That is a TF Sport Aston Martin. We all heard a squeal of tyres from somewhere, and that's Kelvin Fletcher who has gone off the road as well. That's a separate incident, because the TF car, you can see, has gone off at Isle of Ben. Now, is that Graham Davidson in number 47.
Must be, I think.
Yeah, because we'd lost number 2 anyway, hadn't we, a long time ago. So let's have a quick look. There you've got Ryan Ratcliffe. Yeah, there's no blue Aston. So on this last lap, that's Graham Davidson, who's gone a long way off, which makes me think it might have been a failure rather than an error. However, we'll worry about that in a moment, because the race leaders are heading up towards the timing line. The checkered flag will be made ready, and it's Sam Daham that's going to come through for a first ever British GT Championship win. So he's developed a lot in 12 months of racing. Sam Daham then comes now through Druids. He will go down towards Lodge Corner, being chased by Richard Neary in second place, who in turn has fended off the challenge of Andrew Howard. Another car has gone off at Druids in the background. Somebody else has just gone straight on. The car didn't turn, and there it is. It's Ryan Ratcliffe's Bentley that has gone off. Stuart Parker's had another miserable day, but Sam Daham and Johnny Cocker win round 2 of the British GT Championship at Oulton Park. Second is Richard Neary and Adam Christodoulou. Andrew Howard takes third, along with Marco Sorensen. Fourth, Adam Ballon and Phil Keane. Fifth is Dominic Paul and Ben Green. Sixth, Ollie Wilkinson and Brad Ellis. Seventh in the end, after his grassy moment, Ian Logie and Callum McLeod. But after that, it's going to be Adrian Wilmot, isn't it, who will take the 9th place that he has earned with the efforts of Jack Mitchell. Now, what about GT4? Because we've still got cars pouring their way down towards the checkered flag. Number 15, Scott Maxwell, still has the advantage. There are still other battles to be resolved, but in this race, an excellent job done by the Multimatic Mustang squad, and it looks as though Scott Maxwell is going to come through with Seb Prio to score a class win.
And breathe. Well, no, not quite, because the GT4 cars are yet to finish. They should be with us fairly shortly. There we go. And, well, look at that. A mammoth lead now of Scott Maxwell, as everybody else has sort of fallen by the wayside.
That's Graham Davidson out of the car. Johnny Cocker's first win since Thruxton 2007. It's been a long time between wins, but he's back onto the top step. So here you go, a new team to British GT, or returning team in fairness, Multimatic. We have seen the team before, but a long time ago. And it's going to be a win for the new Mustang then, as up towards the line comes Scott Maxwell and Seb Prio to score victory in GT4. Yes, like Andy said, and breathe, but an awful lot going on in that race. Where to start in the inquest? Back markers, David, will be a talking point for some.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it didn't really come into too much consideration in terms of the GT4 ultimate result. We don't quite know what happened to the Scott Malvern Nick Jones car, the way he looped it. You don't know whether he was trying to nip past someone and then just caught him out. So yeah, another action-packed race from what always provides an action-packed race at Oulton Park.
Put your crash helmet back on, as it were. You're, for the sake of argument, Scott Maxwell, you're trying to get through the traffic. Now, is the onus... I mean, it's flippant to say the marshals shouldn't follow the race more because they're busy enough, they don't need to be doing a lap chart. Is it the race director that needs to be saying, right, this car needs a blue flag, or is it down to the teams to be telling their driver, just get out of the way, you're not racing that car? Who ought to be addressing that situation the most?
I think initially it should be the race directors. It could even be the drivers themselves radioing their teams, because they're not in direct contact with race control, but the teams are. So it should be driver to team to race control to marshals, or to the team that's in the way as well. So ultimately the centre of all that comes from race control, realistically.
Indeed so. Well, there is Sam Daham, who will hop out of the car. First time winner in British GT, and somewhere under all of the hands device and the helmet and the balaclava and the earplugs and is a very happy Sam Daham. Yet another win for Barwell Motorsport, Mark Lemmer's team, and there'll be a very happy Johnny Cocker somewhere in the midst of all of this as well. But Sam Daham with a great move and a delighted team. So in your own time, Sam.
Sorry, do we take this off?
Gloves are off, helmet's about to come off, and a 1-4 in the end for Barwell. So Lamborghini, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Lamborghini, BMW, Aston Martin. Let's hear from our race winner, Sam Daham, with Andy J.
Sam, huge congratulations. You look absolutely made up.
Yeah, I was delighted with that. I couldn't have got any better. I think we got really lucky with the pit stop. I mean, with the crash, I don't think there was a safety car. There wasn't a safety car in the end, was there? But got really lucky on the stop, and then it was just clean running from there. Had to work pretty hard to get past Richard in the Merc, but really, really happy with it.
What does it mean to you?
It's great. It's great. I mean, last season was good, but it's nice to have our first...
You've got to wear it now. If you win, you've got to wear it.
Here you go, Luke. Here we go.
Well done, mate. Well done, boys. Make a job. Cheers, mate.
Let's just have a quick word. Are you as thrilled as your teammate?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you know, we had a pretty tough year last year. To be honest, everything seemed to be against us. You know, whenever we had a little break, but we've done a lot of hard work over the winter, and this is a really solid result, obviously, for the team and for me and Sam today, the first win. But yeah, brilliant.
Happy days. Well done, mate. Brilliant. Let's see who else we can grab, shall we? Right, look, here comes the GT4 winner. I'll just give him a moment to get his lid off.
Thank you. Put that on there. You've got one already. Stubborn too, right?
Well done, Scott. Fantastic. Scott, congratulations. Tell me how it feels.
Oh, it feels great. I mean, especially after this morning, both, I think Step and I would admit we sort of let the team down a bit and had a bad result this morning. And, you know, we got BOP'd last night pretty heavily. So it's a bit of a revenge. It's a great series, great track. We're having a blast. I can't wait for the rest of the season, but it went well, thanks.
So it's funny, if you look at the story of the race, you started on pole and you ended up with a victory, but it was no simple matter, was it?
Well, the caution really, the pace car really messed us up a little, because I think we looked pretty good. Sepp had built up 4 or 5 second lead. And that looked great, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I'm back in P5 or whatever, and they told me that, and it's hard to pass here. So, and I don't know this track so well, so I don't really know the good opportunities, but they made me work for it. A couple of spins in front of me helped, some pressure. In the end, it all worked out. Great result for Ford and Multimatic.
You earned it. Well done. Congratulations. Brilliant.
So well done to Scott Maxwell, new to Oulton Park, and coming out on top at the end of another very lively hour of racing. So he's not the first Canadian winner. Chris Nialkos, of course, used to win races in British GT, but Scott Maxwell adding his name to that list of winners. But Sam de Haan and Johnny Cocker come out on top, with Richard Neary and Adam Christodoulou in second place. Andrew Howard and Marco Sorensen take third, with Adam Ballon and Phil Keane fourth. Dominic Paul and Ben Green fifth in the BMW, the best of the BMs, ahead of Ollie Wilkinson and Brad Ellis. Then Ian Logie and Callum McLeod ruining what might have been, but for that moment on the grass at Cascades. Michael Igoe and Adam Wilcox in the GTC Cup class, Cup Spec Porsche, 8th. Adrian Wilmot and Jack Mitchell 9th, and then Scott Maxwell and Seb Prio rounding out the top 10 from Graham Johnson and Michael O'Brien. That's the top 2 within GT4. Rick Parfitt did get going, of course, after whatever his moment was down at Britain's. Whether he pushed or fell, we don't yet know, but either way, the team was 12th, him and Seb Morris, ahead of the Jaguar, the Invictus Games racing car of Steve McCulley and Matt George. Then the Team Parker Mercedes, so another frustrating day for Stuart Parker's guys, because they were looking for a good result, leading GT4, and then Nick Jones looped it, costing him and Scott Malvern the class win, but they were ahead of Graham Davidson and Johnny Adam, who are 15th on distance rather than having taken the checkered flag. The rest of the order you can see with a real jumble, and inevitably some hard luck stories as well. Lots of penalties flying in that for either start infringements or for speeding in the pit lane or for being too short on the pit stops, and there's a bit of damage for the teams to sort out as well before the next round of the championship. But a great drive by Sam de Haan and Johnny Cocker, and Scott Maxwell making a very impressive debut at Oulton Park. And GT4, I think we proved, is going to be in for another excellent season. Very, very competitive it's going to be all year. So the drivers are going to make their way to the podiums very shortly. David, what, if we look back on the 2 races today, have we learned? Can we yet think about a pattern and the rest of the season? I mean, yes, we've seen certain quick cars, and we've worked out that we're going to have some very fierce racing, but what have we learned?
Yeah, I think the big thing that stands out is cut to highlights.
We'll do the highlights first, then you can have a bit more thought on what's going to happen for the rest of the year. It was this good start by Phil Keane that put the Lamborghini into the race lead. Second spot going in towards Old Hall Corner, Adam Christodoulou. You saw the car dart on the brakes as he left it to the very last moment before he committed, but it wasn't long before the battles started to get a bit fractious around the circuit, with elbows out, and the safety car called for early. But when we got back underway, the battle having been interrupted because of Michael Broadhurst in the gravel was renewed. McLaren's at play in GT4. Those cars, I think we worked out, are going to be quick all season. It almost came to grief there because we lost across the grass the number 4 Tolman McLaren early on, as Josh Smith ran out of road. Everybody else squabbled on, but Phil Keane was doing his level best to build up the lead, but he would have to serve 7 extra seconds of success time in the pit stops. We lost Will Moore spectacularly going off the road down towards Cascades, and what could have been a huge impact ended up with relatively a cushioned blow against the tyres. Pit stop cycle through in GT3, Phil Keane giving way to Adam Ballon, coming out ahead of some, but losing track position against the likes of Dehaan and Neary. We lost Mark Farmer completely this spin. He got going again, but then went across the road and got beached on the other side of the circuit. So out came the safety car for the second time, and on the restart it was Richard Neary trying to keep Sam Dehaan at bay, but for how long could he do it? We also had Seb Morris going off, and lots of people having to move that car out of harm's way before he was able to rejoin. He did on the lead lap, salvaged some points. Richard Neary made a small mistake going down towards Hislops, got back on the road. Ian Loggie was delayed yet again, but through into the lead had gone Sam Dehaan. Adam Ballon tried to get third, but it was Andrew Howard that came off best. That was how Nick Jones lost his class lead. He ran out of brakes seemingly at the end of the straight, across the grass, and then got sideways. That was enough to put Scott Maxwell into the class lead. Others ended up hitting bodywork in the middle of the road. We lost Graham Davidson with a huge lose and a very big impact indeed into the tyre barrier going through Island Bend. And I just wonder whether Ryan Ratcliffe running over that bit of debris was the result of this, because that was a punctured tyre that put him off a couple of laps later. So into a lead he was never to lose had gone Sam Dehaan, with Johnny Cocker winning race 2 of the weekend here. In second place it was Adam Christodoulou and Richard Neary at the end of a great second British GT Championship race of the weekend. So a great result for Barwell, and the podium is ready for the first podium ceremony at the end of race 2, and there are going to be some very happy drivers. Andrew Howard and Marco Sorensen are called forward. First of all, finishing third in GT3. Still seems slightly odd at times, Andy, to have the likes of Marco or Nicky Tim in the championship as factory Aston Martin drivers. Not that I'm decrying the level the championship's at, but just because they're a bit random to be at Oulton Park.
Well, yes, indeed, but we are spoilt, aren't we, really, these days, with the top-notch driver lineup we have. Some obviously world-class pros, but very quick AM drivers as well, and we're seeing them. It's fascinating to watch them over the years improve and improve, isn't it? But I'm really made up for Johnny Cocker and Sam Dehaan. They came so close, didn't they, last year, towards the end of the season, with that second-place finish at Brands Hatch, where Johnny was overtaken by the other Johnny Adam, for the victory with, 5 minutes or less to go. They really thought they defended brilliantly throughout the whole second half of that 2-hour race. Came within a few minutes of taking their first victory together. It's not Johnny Cocker's first victory, of course, but it is Sam's first time on the top step of the British GT podium. And what a race to do it in, because that was one of the most entertaining races we've had for quite some time. David Pittard made the point that the racing here at Oulton Park often is fairly intense. Today certainly lived up to that reputation, didn't it?
Absolutely, and Sam Dehaan, I think I might have been a bit generous too by calling him a teenager. He's early 20s now, time marches on, but he's driven like a pro. It's only his second year of racing, and an excellent job done. Jonathan Wells from Pirelli was the man you saw handing over the trophies. Pirelli, hugely enthusiastic supporters of GT racing, not just in Britain, but internationally these days, and Jonathan Wells from Pirelli will be back in a few moments with the trophies for the GT4 teams. But right now, celebrations on the podium, and Johnny Cocker, who's been, 12 years between wins in British GT, celebrates with Sam Dehaan. Andrew Howard, the ice cream magnate, former mini racer, double champion, and an excellent result for him. Andrew went off for a few years to race in Europe, but has come back to British GT and going very, very strongly indeed. But good to see Adam Christodoulou going well. And those Lamborghinis, David, have certainly proved to be very rapid all weekend, have they not?
Yes, the Lamborghini chassis and V10 engine combination seems to work really well around here. The tight, twisty nature, suiting that car. So yeah, good for those guys to get a solid points haul for their championship challenge, as with the ebbs and flows of the calendar and the car's characteristics, etc. They need to take all the points they can whilst they can.
Indeed. So the drivers make their way from the podium. We turn to GT4. Johnny Cocker there being interviewed as he makes an all-smiling return to a British GT podium. GT4, though, again, giving some tremendous action. Every season we touch on the fact that maybe we're almost at the point where the GT4 cars ought to get their own race. We're not far off, I don't think, because they are not only more numerous year on year, but also ultra competitive year on year. So Steve McCulley and Matt George go to the podium.
I believe, David, that's the first podium, is it not, for Invictus Games? I don't think they made the podium last year, so...
Not an overall one, no. I think they were on the podium early, weren't they, in Pro-Am?
Pro-Am, yes, correct.
But,
no, an outright podium.
An outright podium, you're absolutely right. But there are the winners in GT4, Seb Priaulx and Scott Maxwell. Ben, I know that Andy Priaulx is here, and Seb's mum, Jo, and they will be delighted to see Seb, after a tough season in Formula 4 last year, on the podium, and Scott Maxwell making a good debut in British GT. First time he's raced at Oulton Park, but belying that lack of experience of the circuit, Jonathan Wells hands over the trophies. You see also Graham Johnson and Michael O'Brien second in the Balfe McLaren. New driver combination there as well. Mike Robinson not with Graham Johnson for the first time in living memory, but they've worked well together, and very happy Seb Priaulx, and that Ford Mustang I think has certainly served its intent this weekend.
Yeah, it's good to see them on the top step of the podium, isn't it, after race one sort of got away from them, rather. But I'm sure the discussions will now continue behind the scenes as to whether or not they need picking back further. But I think from what we could see there, it seemed fair enough, didn't it? They benefited hugely from the safety car situation, and Seb put in a good stint at the start of the race as well, and it rather makes up for the slightly scrappy end to the race that they had earlier on. But yes, Ford Mustang, top step of the podium on its debut in the championship, debut weekend at least, and a circuit that I personally didn't necessarily expect it to excel at either. So, you know, you see these sort of big, heavy front-engined American muscle car type things, they tend to go better at places like Donington or Silverstone than the tight and technical Oulton Park, so bodes well for the future.
It does indeed, but we've now got the Pro-Am podium where Nick Jones and Scott Malvern step forward for Team Parker Racing, with the Mercedes AMG GT4 for third place within Pro-Am. Steve McCulley and Matt George will be back as the runners-up in Pro-Am, so they've had a third overall, a second in Pro-Am, an excellent weekend. And Steve McCulley, who came into Caterham Racing but was very, very badly injured in Afghanistan, Major Steve McCulley to give him his full title. And they're the Pro-Am winners, Michael O'Brien and Graham Johnson. And David, this Pro-Am initiative is a great idea, isn't it? It encourages the AMs in, they can benefit from the tutelage of the pros like you and move their own racing on.
Yeah, it's a very good balance the way they've got it. I mean, you look at race one, where the Silvers qualified for race one, and I think it was an all-silver crewed lineup, but then with this change of the qualifying format, it's now a full pro, apart from the overall winners, I suppose, there's now a mixture of the pros and AMs and silvers on the podium. So yeah, it really mixes it up. So the balance of the weights and success penalties, etc., they've really got it down to a fine tee.
And a great mix of cars as well represented across the podium there, with McLaren, with Jaguar and Mercedes, and that variety on the grid in both classes is another huge selling point of the championship now.
Exactly, 10 brands represented across the 3 classes that we have now, 6 of those in GT3 and 7 in GT4, and whilst we do have lots of Aston Martins and McLarens, we still have so much variety out there, and different circuits will suit different cars, different parts of different circuits will suit different cars as well, which is what produces this really fascinating racing that we see frequently from the championship in both classes. But it's all about having the car that works as well as it can everywhere, isn't it? They're the cars that tend to fight for the championships at the end of the year, and that's what these teams are so good at doing, taking a car that maybe goes to a circuit which maybe ought not to suit it. You could argue that Multimatic have done that this weekend and dragging a result out of it. Then when they get to circuits that do suit those cars, they can really start to stretch their legs. But yeah, great variety across all 3 classes, and long may that continue.
Absolutely right. We're in for a great season, that is for sure. And what is so pleasing is to see not only the size of the grid, but the variety of car and also the quality of racing. We look forward to your company next time at Snetterton for the next rounds of the British GT Championship for 2019. But from Oulton Park, from Andy McHugh and David Pittard and David Addison, it's goodbye.